Alright, now let's get to the fun part, which is our watercolor. So if you have a watercolor pad like this, which is our koi set, you can get this for about 30 bucks, which is pretty good. It's a pocket field sketchbook, or sketch box, sorry. And you have these multiple little colors here, and that would work great. I also have a little palette here that I've been using as well. And I have these brushes here. So these brushes are kind of nifty. You basically just, rotate this and you fill it with water. And then what you basically do is you push this area here and it just squirts out water onto the brush for you. However, one of mine isn't working, but this one does, but it's okay. I'm using a bit of water here. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. So make sure your water is pretty filled. Mine is actually not, so I will go ahead and do that real quick. Alright, so I now have my water filled. So if you're having a small container like this, I would actually suggest you guys, if you're working on a big piece, you work on a big piece like this, I would suggest that you guys switch out the water often because you want the purest color possible. If not, your colors will end up looking muddy. So if your colors start looking a lot darker and more saturated color, it's about time to switch it out. If it's still pretty clear, relatively clear, and with a little bit of pigment, you don't need to change it just yet. But let's just start off with the skin. So I usually like to make skin like this. So I'm actually going to zoom in so you guys can see how I do it. I like to wet my my paper first because I like to do a wet on wet. So I'm only going to do the face right now first. I'm using my broad brush here. I like using a broad brush for big pieces like this because it gives more surface area. So as long as you can see like a shine, if you tilt your paper just a little bit, and see a little bit of shininess, you guys can basically get ready to paint. So this is pretty much damp now. Make sure you have a paper towel with you. This is starting to smudge a little bit, which is not very good. So I'm going to take the color out from there. Okay, basically, going to wet this, and then I'm going to take an orange 067. I'm going to put it on my palette. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to dilute this a little bit. And I'm going to paint now. And because this is wet, we'll basically have a nice base to start off with. Oh, yikes. Okay, I know why now. I'm going to have to wash my brush out first because I had blue ink on my paper, and now it's starting to spread on my my paint. It's starting to spread on my paper, which I don't like. That I should have cleaned it first. So clean your brush first, or else it's gonna look messed up. So while your paper is still wet, you want to paint. I want to paint very lightly so you can see a little bit of pigment on top. In fact, I would even suggest just go all out on it. Just kind of paint everything. This is a good starter for skin. And then what I'm going to do is the hard part is to wait. Wait for this to dry. But while you're waiting for this to dry, what you can do is basically start, applying some other colors or some other areas of color that you want. So I'm going to go ahead and spread out more color around the neck area while I wait for that to kind of dry a little bit. Oh, I should have made this wet first. So I'm going to take my brush and make it a little bit more wet. And now I'm going to just spread this across. So if you come across this problem, just spread it with water. Make sure your paper is wet while you do this. So this is good enough for now. I'm going to start from there. And when this is pretty much dry, still see a little bit of shininess, but that's okay. Because this is very light, it's okay to color over the lines here. Okay, so now this is pretty much mostly dry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of tint. So I'm going to add a little bit of a pink tint here. So I have a pre-made pink tint. All I really did was added a number 14 with a little bit of white. So I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to add a little bit of 014. And I'm going to mix it with this orange here. And that gives a very, very nice blush-like pink. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to take my other brush right now. My other brush is more of like a smoother brush to work with. Make sure you always have a paper towel with you, by the way, so that you can wipe off excess. So I'm going to take this blush color, and I'm going to use this as a little bit of a shadow. So I'm just going to be putting it in areas like around the top of the head here. Make sure the paper's still a little bit wet if you want to get a wetter finish. So I like to kind of keep my paper still a little bit wet, not too dry, or else it will look really, really cracked and kind of nasty. So I like to kind of blush the tops of the head just to kind of give a nice bit of color, especially around the cheeks. So notice that when it's wet, you can apply color a lot easier because the wetness of the paper kind of smooths out your brush strokes. So you can start adding little bits of different kinds of pigment. I'm also going to add a little bit of this pigment towards the bottom. Now make sure this area is a little bit more wet so you can spread it easier. So notice how as I added more wetness, it spread a lot easier that time. So rather than making a choppy look, you want to make sure that it is smooth at first. And then when you add shadows, like harsher shadows, for example, then you want to wait for it to dry. So I'm going to add a little bit more tint by adding my blending my 067 and my 14 and blending those two together to make that nice blush, and diluting it with a little bit of water, which will make it look really nice. So this is diluted a little bit. I'm going to add some towards the neck area just to kind of blush the body just a little bit. So it's not just pure orange, it's a little bit rosy, especially around the shoulders. Some nice blush happens there too. So it kind of looks a little bit like Copics the more you kind of apply it better. So applying watercolor with these brushes is a lot easier than just with the traditional kind, although both just requires a lot more skill, but this feels like a good entry. So I used to be terrible at watercolor because I could not wait. I'm always just kind of like messing up on everything. But anyways, okay, so now this is mostly dry. You want to touch it, see if it's wet enough or dry enough. And then I'm going to have you take a 197, a little bit of that, put it next to your palette. So this looks a little bit kind of dark here. I'm going to basically make you guys use a little bit of a number 71, which is a bit of a yellow or tone. And I'm going to mix that together with my brown. And not only that, but I'm also going to mix it with this peachy tone. So that kind of creates like a middle shadow that is not too offensive for her skin. So I'm going to add in areas of this shadow. Because this is dry, you can see that that has a nice clear divide or line here. I'm going to add it underneath. I'm going to add it underneath the hairlines and everything like that, because those would always cast a shadow. I'm also, once again, just layering colors. So I'm not, going pure dark. I'm going step by step. I'm taking just a slightly dark color, and then I'm just painting it very softly. So I'm going to also paint a little bit of shadow around the nose here, and around the edges of the face. So my paper's starting to warp a little bit, but that's okay. This is watercolor paper after all. So you're gonna have to just deal with it, honestly. Let's see if I can if it dries, I can kind of push it back. Right now, it looks a little bit distorted because of the water content in there, which is okay. So I'm gonna press this down a little bit so you guys can see that, if you have, not as good quality paper, it starts warping really bad. That's good enough for now. So let's wait for that to dry, and then we'll add some darker darks. I'm going to add a little bit of darkness around the mouth. So I'm going to take my rose tone here. I'm going to take a 0 at number 14. Kind of just put it right there. And I'm going to take my brown, which is the number 97. And I'm actually going to make it a little bit darker. This is kind of getting a bit dark. I'm going to add a little bit of my darker brown right here, number 94, 194. I'm just going to be mixing those two together. So it kind of creates a brownish red that isn't too intense. And then I'm going to mix that with my lighter tones here. And then I'm going to fill the mouth here. I'm actually going to make this just a little bit lighter by adding a little bit of wetness. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to blot it out with my paper towel, just to kind of give it a lighter tone. So as you can see, by blotting the color out with the paper towel, it becomes a little bit lighter and gentler in tone. There. I'm going to also use this tone as kind of a bit of a blush. But first, before I do that, I'm going to have to wet the paper. I'm going to wet the paper a little bit around the sides of her face. I'm going to wet it. And my water's starting to get a little bit saturated, so I'm going to change it out soon. So I'm going to add this nice kind of bright red, and I'm going to just spread it across her cheeks. Of course, if it starts becoming a little bit too intense, I can blot it out with my paper towel. And kind of blend it around the face there. So it starts looking a lot smoother. So I'm not going to touch the face anymore. I'm going to move on before it gets too warped. So I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to just continue and do the rest of the hands. So I'm going to clean my brush, and I am going to take my big brush here, wet it, and then wet everything around the arms with this color. Now, because this is more of like a peachy tone, it's easier to kind of mix in the colors here. It's kind of nice that we already have a little bit of a color set up in here with the water. So just wet it. Don't worry too much about, being in the lines or whatever. And then we're going to take that orange tone again, that's number 67. Going to just lighten that just going to lighten that a lot. And we're going to spread it all around the hands and the arms and the rest of the areas with skin. So it looks wet at first, but, it's okay. It just happens. You just got to wait for it to dry. So there is the skin. So now I'm just going to pause and wait for this to dry, and I will be right back. Alright, so now that this is mostly dry, we're going to add some darkness around the face. So I'm going to be most likely focusing on the face, but first let me go ahead and change my water. I forgot to do that. Okay, finally back. Alright, so I'm going to take my kind of sharper brush, and I'm going to mix a bit of my 197 here into my orangish tone here. But since this looks a little bit too red, I'm going to add a little bit of number 71, and that is a kind of like a yellow ochre color. This is good. So now I'm going to add in, just reinforce that shadow into those areas that I colored before. So adding a little bit around the eyelashes, and the eyelashes, the eyelids. Around the corners of the face. And around the nose. Because this is a kind of like a nice airy area that she's in, she's probably not going to have a lot of harsh lighting, so I'm not going to add too much darks. So I'm going to also add a little bit of that dark color as well. I'm going to once again mix it again, add a little bit of that ochre, and then I'm going to paint underside of the neck, on the under part here, or beneath the neck, beneath the chin. I can't talk when I'm concentrating. So there is the shadow for the neck. I'm going to add the same shadow around the clavicle, because that usually has a nice little dip. If it looks a little bit too harsh, use some water and just kind of smooth it out. Just add a little bit of that darkness there. So it looks nice and smooth. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of mix this in a little bit so it doesn't look too harsh. When it comes to skin, you know, it's very delicate, so you want to just kind of go a little bit careful with that. So that is, you know, the shadow areas here. If you want to add a little bit more darkness, go ahead and take a 194, kind of mix that in again. This is for darker darks, I would say. But even with like fair skin, you don't want to go too dark. That didn't really do anything. Oh well, that's fine. So we have the face pretty much done in terms of skin. Now let's continue on to the arms, which will be relatively pretty easy. So I'm going to fill this all in with that one color again, that light orange. Kind of just reinforce that color in, so it's not too opaque, or sorry, not too transparent. So once I added that, then I'm going to take my dark. I'm just going to be coloring in areas underneath the leaves, on the sides. I'm going to take my darker, sorry, my thinner brush. I'm going to create that dark area again. 197, number 71, or yeah, number 71. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of white just to kind of make it a little bit more lighter in tone. So something like that. And I'm going to apply water to dilute it so I can apply it softly rather than make it super harsh. So I like to add in the shadows around the breast area. And I have to wait for this to dry because I made it a little bit too wet. Well, which is fine. It's okay. So areas like around the arm here, on the side of the arm is good. Kind of blend it in if you need to. Add a little bit of this shadow over underneath the folds here too. There. If you want to, make it dry quicker, you can blow on it. And then we can add in that darker value again around the armpit area. It's still a little bit too wet, so I'm going to blot this out because that looks a little bit weird. I'm just going to wait for this part to dry before I move on to anything else. So I'm going to do the same process for the arms here. So I'm going to fill this in with that nice orange, once again, number 67. Use a bit of water to dilute and spread it across. So right now it looks a little bit weird orange. I'm just going to spread it out with water. Water is transparent. Watercolor is pretty transparent, so don't worry about coloring over some areas like the flowers or anything like that, because that can always be colored in later. Gonna add a little bit more color here as well. And let's wait for that to dry. So, yeah, I'll be right back.